She stepped out of her modest sedan like it was nothing. No entourage, no bravado, just a simple case in her right hand, her blue eyes narrowing at the wide-open expanse of Air Force Base. Why did everyone turn to look? Because nothing about her fit the picture. This was the annual Long-Range Precision Championship, the place where America's best marksmen tested their limits, where careers were validated and reputations made. 53 competitors, combat veterans, special operators, decorated warriors. And then her, a woman in her mid-20s, hair tied back in a regulation bun, uniform neat but unremarkable. And the case in her hand, that would be the problem. Truck doors slammed shut all around the gravel lot. Weathered men shook hands like old comrades, trading deployment stories, laughing about firefights in Iraq, the heat of Afghanistan, the cold mountains where only precision had kept them alive. They measured each other in scars and in stories. When she walked past them, they measured her differently. At the registration tent, the young private barely glanced up. Name: Lieutenant. The officer scanned the clipboard. Number 53, last slot, good luck, you'll need it. The words weren't cruel, just dismissive, the way someone speaks when they've already decided the ending. She nodded, silent, and took her packet. 53, the last number, the hardest slot. She didn't need to ask why. Afternoon winds, fatting light. The cursed position everyone avoided. Coincidence? No, someone had arranged it. Someone wanted her to fail. She didn't argue, she never did. The preparation area buzzed with easy laughter, the kind that comes when men believe the world belongs to them. Staff Sergeant James Miller, age 45 and confident, told stories of his 3-tour. Every word fed the younger men who orbited him like planets around the sun. His voice carried the kind of weight you only earn under fire. Vacation compared to, he chuckled, patting his rifle. You want pressure. Try making the shot when your buddy's bleeding out and you've got seconds to decide. The circle of admirers laughed with him, nodding. This was the hierarchy, experience at the top, hopefuls at the bottom. Until opened her case. The sound of metal latches clicking open wasn't unusual, but what lay inside silenced the area like a gunshot. A precision rifle AXMC chassis, immaculate, modified with expert care, and painted in a color so bright, so defiant it was an insult. Pink. The laughter came immediately. Holy hell, Barbie brought her toy chest. Is this a fashion show? War doesn't come in pretty colors, sweetheart. Miller himself smirked, shaking his head. This ain't a parade, Lieutenant. Wrong battlefield. The crowd howled. She didn't look up, didn't flinch. Her hands moved with practiced efficiency, assembling, checking, calibrating, smooth, cold, deliberate. They didn't see her precision. They only saw pink. Airman leaned toward Miller. $10 says she doesn't make it past 800 meters. Miller grinned. Make it 20. I've seen her type before. All gear, no grit. And still she said nothing. Captain, the range officer, called the field to order. His voice carried authority and lady. His nod toward her wasn't mocking, but it was careful. Welcome to the 36th Annual Long-Range Precision Championship. Distances today: 800, 1200, 2000, 3000, 4000, 5000. And for the finalists, he paused. 6,200 meters, 4 miles. A shot never successfully recorded in this competition's history. The murmurs swelled. 4 miles, beyond what most believed humanly possible. His hand slipped into her pocket, brushing the small pendant she carried. Pink enamel, simple. She closed her fingers around it just long enough to feel the weight, then she tucked it back. Her weapon assembled, she knelt, her breath steady. She whispered numbers under her breath like a private prayer. Effect, spin drift, barometric pressure, equations no manual ever taught. When her first bullet chambered with a clean metallic click, the laughter faded just slightly. Shooter ready? Asked. Gave a single nod. The range fell into silence. She lowered herself onto the mat, her cheek pressed against the cool stock, the world narrowing to the circle of her scope. 3 breaths, the pause between heartbeats, a whisper of exhale. Crack! The steel rang at 800 meters, dead center. The spotter's voice cracked, center mass. A ripple spread through the field, surprised silence. She didn't react, no smile, no triumph, just another round chambered smooth as breath. Beginner's luck, muttered, but even he didn't sound sure. When the second round came at 1,200 meters, the silence felt heavier. Her breath was the only rhythm. Crack, another perfect shot, dead center. Somebody cursed under their breath. Miller's eyes narrowed. He wasn't laughing now. He was studying her posture, her timing, the ritual in her breathing, too precise, too controlled. 2 shots could be luck. But what if it was? For a moment she wasn't at. She was 17 again. Civilian range. Standing beside her twin sister Sophie. Their father watching with quiet pride. 2 girls taking turns, hitting every target until the range master himself stopped to stare. Her sister's grin, watch and learn, Em. Her own teasing reply, not bad, soft. And then her father's hand on their shoulders, heavy, steady. Both of you, remember, control beats chaos, always. The memory vanished as she rose from the mat, silent as ever. By the time the competition reached 2,000 meters, nearly a third of the field was eliminated. The wind was picking up. Misses began to scatter the air. When she stepped forward again, eyes followed her. Fewer chuckles now, more whispers. What's she writing? Her notebook was filled with lines of formulas. Angles, numbers, curves, crosswinds. Most shooters relied on charts, crude estimations. She wasn't estimating. She was calculating. Frowned, that ain't standard. Miller shook his head. No, that's something else. Another shot, 2,000 meters, perfect. The old veteran in the wheelchair leaned forward. His lips trembled around the words. I've seen that technique before, not since '91. Miller caught the words, his chest tightened. What did that mean? By 3,000 meters, only 15 competitors remained. The ones who still doubted her, they weren't laughing anymore. She sat apart during the break, writing in her waterproof notebook, approached, offering her water. Impressive shooting, Lieutenant, first time here. She nodded. Unusual rifle color, he noted lightly. It serves its purpose. Something flickered in his eyes, like he knew more than he let on. Her notebook slipped, pages fluttering open, caught it before the wind did. He glanced at the formulas and at the sketch. An insignia, wings, a dagger. For a fraction of a second his face tightened. Careful with that, Major, he caught himself. Lieutenant. Their eyes met, a silent exchange. He handed it back. Miller had been watching from a distance. He didn't hear the words, but he saw enough. His gut twisted. Something about this woman wasn't adding up. Who the hell was? What happens when silence unnerves the loudest man in the room? By the time the 3,000-meter stage was called, Staff Sergeant Miller wasn't smirking anymore. He had seen arrogance collapse on ranges before, new shooters making one good shot, maybe 2, before the winds and physics humbled them. But this wasn't that. This was something different, something colder. 15 shooters remained. The atmosphere had changed. Stepped forward, notebook in hand, her preparation ritual exact, mechanical. She pulled out a compact digital weather meter, something most shooters didn't bother with. The screen glowed with numbers, density, altitude, humidity, barometric shifts. She fed it all into her formulas. Her lips moved as she recalculated, like she was reciting scripture. Miller watched her breathing change, not the 3 breaths she'd taken before, something new. 5 shallow inhales, 1 deep pull, then the pause. The old veteran in the wheelchair leaned forward, his eyes glassy but sharp. His whisper carried across the tense silence. The bishop technique. Miller's head snapped toward him. "What?" The old man didn't answer, just stared at like he was seeing a ghost. The range went quiet. His rifle barked once. The steel rang true dead center. At 3,000 meters under shifting winds, it shouldn't have been possible, not with that calm certainty. "That's not possible," one of the eliminated shooters muttered. But it had just happened. Miller fired his round next. It hit, respectable but not perfect. He stood slowly, his mind replaying every detail, the specialized breathing, the strange formulas, the whispered word, Bishop. Where the hell had she learned that? During the break, Miller intercepted her at the water station. "Where'd you learn to shoot, Lieutenant?" Her blue eyes met his evenly, here and there. "I've read rosters. There aren't many female combat snipers, and none with your level of—" "Times change, Sergeant." Her tone was calm, measured. He stepped closer. "That breathing technique you're using, that's not in any Air Force manual." For the first time, something flickered across her face. Not fear, not surprise, just caution. "We all develop our own methods." "Do we?" Miller pressed. "Or do we learn them in programs that don't officially exist?" Before she could answer, called them back. "Next round in 5 minutes, shooters to stations." Her notebook slipped again as she walked past him. This time, Miller bent quickly, picking it up before she did. His eyes caught more than just formulas, a sketch, an insignia, a winged dagger not standard issue, and letters scribbled beneath, S7P Sierra, 7. His blood ran cold. He had heard whispers, not in official briefings, not in manuals, in dark corners of bases, in hushed tones among Tier 1 operators. Sierra 7, a program rumored to exist above even Delta or DEVGRU, a place where the military pushed human limits, precision beyond the possible. He returned the notebook without a word. Their eyes locked. For the first time, he realized he wasn't sure he wanted to know who she really was. The 4,000-meter round began. 5 competitors remained. The distance itself was brutal. The air shifted, the light changed. Even veterans sweated at this stage. Lowered herself again. Notebook calculations, weather meter. Calm, perfectly calm. Miller found himself studying her instead of his own scope. The small adjustments, the rhythm, the silence in her eyes. The shot cracked. Another center hit. A murmur spread. It wasn't possible, not at this distance, not with this weather. Made notes on his clipboard, face unreadable. But when returned to her station, a silver-haired civilian had arrived. His suit was crisp, but his stance, shoulders squared, chin set, screamed military. Miller didn't know him, but he knew power when he saw it. The old veteran in the wheelchair whispered again, louder this time. "She's one of them, has to be." Miller bent low. "One of who?" The old man's eyes found his, steady despite the years. "Son, there are programs out there you don't ask about. Programs where they train shooters to do the impossible, where failure isn't an option. Sierra 7. Miller's stomach dropped. When his turn came, his hands were steady. His shot landed close, not center, but good enough to maintain his standing. Only 5 remained, and the storm was building. Dark clouds rolled across the base, the light dimming, the winds chopping. At 5,000 meters, this would be chaos. Called the stage. Conditions deteriorating. Visibility reduced to 80%. Winds irregular, adjust accordingly. Miller grinned, regaining some of his confidence. This is it. This is where real-world combat separates the pros from the range queens. But even as he spoke, his voice lacked the edge of certainty, because when moved to the line, her face hadn't changed. No worry, no hesitation. Her notebook filled with fresh numbers, complex, layered, almost inhuman. "What's she doing now?" whispered. Miller shook his head. "Nothing I've ever seen." Settled behind her rifle. Her breathing slowed, then shifted into something beyond technique, almost meditative. The wind gusted violently. Any other shooter would have aborted, waited. She didn't. Crack. The spotter froze, then shouted, his disbelief barely contained. Dead center, 5,000 meters. The silence that followed was heavy, thick, almost reverent. Even Miller couldn't hide it. He looked at her not with disdain anymore, but with something harder. Fear, respect, confusion. His own shot landed close, impressive in its own right, but no one was looking at him. They were all looking at her. When rushed up later, his phone glowing with half documents, Miller already knew what he'd say. "Sarge, I found it. Program Sierra 7. Something about precision engagement beyond theoretical maximums. Most of it's redacted." Miller's jaw tightened. She's not just some lieutenant, she's something else. Something we're not supposed to know about. And for the first time in his life, Staff Sergeant James Miller, veteran of 3 Tour, survivor of and Helmand, realized he was in over his head. The competition was no longer about a trophy. It was about uncovering who really was. And why she'd come here at all. What does it take for silence to command more respect than shouting? By the time the competitors regrouped for the 5,000-meter stage, the entire base had shifted. The mood was no longer casual, no longer playful. Men who had once mocked her now stood behind scopes, sweating. Hadn't said a word all day, and yet, without raising her voice, she had become the storm. The real storm gathered above them too. Clouds blackened, winds shifted unpredictably, the kind of weather that could bend bullets off steel. It was perfect, the kind of chaos where legends are either made or destroyed. Voice boomed over the growing wind. 5,000-meter stage. Weather conditions. Visibility 80%, gusts variable from the west. No delays. Combat doesn't wait for clear skies. Staff Sergeant Miller rubbed his jaw. This is it. This is where she cracks. Precision's one thing, adapting under chaos. That's combat. But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed himself. Opened her notebook again, her pencil scratching complex equations. Page after page of variables. Not just crosswind drift, she was calculating density shifts in real time. Her weather meter beeped in her hand. The equations grew more detailed, more alien. "She's overthinking," one competitor muttered. But when she settled behind her rifle, the world seemed to still. Her breathing changed yet again. Not 3 breaths, not 5 shallow pulls, something deeper, slower, as though she wasn't just breathing air, she was sinking with the storm itself. "Shooter ready," called. Gave a single nod. The wind screamed. Her finger tightened. Crack. The shot tore through the gale, and for a moment no one breathed. Then the metallic ping echoed across the valley. "Center mass," the spotter shouted, his professional mask cracking into awe. It was impossible. The range erupted in stunned silence, broken only by the whisper of the old veteran in the wheelchair. His hand trembled as it gripped his blanket. "I knew it. She's Sierra 7. Miller's throat tightened. His own shot struck steel, a near miracle in these conditions, but it didn't matter. He'd been outshot again. Not just outshot, outclassed. As competitors broke for water, Miller stalked toward her. He could feel the anger rising, not at her, but at the wall of secrecy around her. "That pink rifle," he said, voice low, sharp. "There's a story there, isn't there, Lieutenant?" Her hand brushed the pendant at her neck without meaning to. For the first time all day, her composure slipped. A fraction. "There is," she admitted softly, "but not one I'm sharing today." Miller's jaw clenched. "Who are you really? Because no one without combat experience shoots like this. Nobody." The others turned, listening. Silence stretched between them like a drawn bowstring. His eyes locked on his. "You're right, Sergeant Miller. Nobody who's never seen combat shoots like this." The implication was heavier than any confession. And then she turned away, leaving him with the words burning in his mind. The storm worsened. Rain began to fall, sheets slanting across the range. Lightning cracked in the distance. By the time called the 6,200-meter stage, only 3 competitors remained: Miller and Master Sergeant Dawson, a quiet Marine with eyes like stone. Final stage announced. Distance 6,200 meters. Conditions severe. Proceed regardless. Combat doesn't wait. Dawson fired first. His bullet vanished into the storm, no sound of impact returning. His face was steady as he rose, a Marine who knew his limits and respected them. Miller stepped forward. He wiped water from his scope, tightened his grip, and settled in. His world narrowed. He had made impossible shots before, but this was on the edge of madness. The shot cracked, for 2 heartbeats nothing. Then a ping, faint but real, outer edge of steel, a miracle. He stood breathless, chest pounding. Applause broke out, even he smiled. "Let's see anyone beat that," he muttered, and then stepped forward. The rain plastered her uniform to her frame, lightning illuminating her in cold flashes. She lowered herself onto the mat, notebook open, equations sprawling across 3 pages. Her breathing slowed into something beyond human rhythm. Her eyes narrowed behind the scope. "Shooter ready." Her nod was small, certain. The wind howled. Crack. The storm itself seemed to pause. For several seconds there was only silence. Then, impossibly faint, impossibly clear, ping. The spotter's voice cracked with disbelief. "Center mass, 6,200 meters, perfect hit." No one spoke, not even Miller. And then a gust ripped her jacket open as she rose. The storm tore the fabric just enough to reveal ink beneath. A tattoo, not decoration, an insignia, the same dagger-end wing sketch from her notebook. Miller saw it. His blood ran cold. Whispers erupted across the crowd. The old veteran whispered it louder this time, almost proud. "Tier 1, Sierra 7. Miller's knees felt weak. He had mocked her, bet against her, called her Barbie. And here she was, not just a competitor, not just a soldier, something else. Something from the shadows of the military he thought he understood. Packed her rifle with calm efficiency, oblivious to the storm of realization tearing through the range. The silver-haired civilian, general now, his rank no longer hidden, approached her. They spoke in tones no one else could hear. Miller's chest heaved as he whispered to himself, "My God, she's Tier 1. Thunder split the sky, and in that crack of sound a truth settled over the range. This wasn't just a competition anymore. It was a test, and had just broken a record no man had ever touched. What happens when the truth becomes too big to hide? The range still buzzed with shock after her impossible hit. Even as rain poured, men huddled under canopies, whispering. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others stole glances at the woman with the pink rifle, no longer a joke, no longer an afterthought. She had become the center of the storm, and none of them knew what to do with that. Staff Sergeant Miller stood off to the side, arms crossed, chest tight. He replayed every moment of the day, the smirks, the bets, the mockery, his voice echoing over her. War doesn't come in pretty colors. And her silence in return. The silence that had outshot him, outclassed him, outlasted him. Now he knew why. Sierra 7. He had heard whispers of it, in tents and mess halls, in the dark corners of bases where operators spoke of ghosts. Programs so classified they weren't supposed to exist. Shooters who could do the impossible. People who weren't legends because legends were talked about. Sierra 7 was not. And now one of them stood 30 feet away, calmly wiping down a bright pink rifle, while the rest of them struggled to process what they'd just witnessed. The storm raged above. Lightning lit her silhouette in harsh flashes. She looked like something out of myth, and Miller hated how much that image burned inside him. He told himself it wasn't envy, it was suspicion, distrust. Because nobody from a program like that shows up to a competition without a reason. He stalked toward her. "That shot," he said flatly, standing just behind her bench. "No rifle does that, not at 6,200 meters, not in this weather." Didn't look up. She ran an oilcloth down the rifle's barrel, her movements slow and practiced. Apparently one does. "You're cheating, or using tech nobody else has. Either way, it's not regulation." His voice carried across the tents. Competitors turned. The whispers grew louder. Frowned, stepping forward. "Is there a problem, Sergeant?" "Sir, I'm requesting a full inspection of Lieutenant's equipment," Miller barked. "That's shot physics. We need to know if she's playing fair." Finally looked up. Her blue eyes locked on him, calm but heavy. "I consent." The inspection was thorough. Every piece of her rifle laid bare on the table. No illegal modifications. No hidden tech. Just meticulous craftsmanship. Hand-carved adjustments. Custom dampeners. Every part legal. Every part ordinary except for its perfection. "And the paint?" "Cosmetic only," the inspector muttered. Miller's jaw clenched. "It was my sister's design," said softly, eyes never leaving the weapon. "She built it, painted it pink when she finished. Said if you're going to do the impossible, you might as well do it with style." For the first time all day, something raw slipped into her voice. Not arrogance, not defiance, just memory. Miller froze, his suspicion wavered. But only for a second. He turned to, "Sir, I still contest. One impossible shot doesn't prove capability. In the field, it's not about static conditions, it's about stress, movement, real combat." Sighed, but before he could respond, the silver-haired general stepped forward. No longer hiding, no longer silent. "Then we test her," General said. His voice carried like thunder. "SOCOM verification protocol." The murmurs swelled. Shock, fear, awe. The SOCOM protocol was rarely invoked. A nightmare of dynamic shooting under combat-simulated stress. Rapid target acquisition, movement, timing, and extreme distance combined. A course that broke even elite shooters. His eyes moved too. "Lieutenant, as record holder you have the right to decline. No penalty, your standing remains." The crowd leaned in, waiting. His gaze met his. For a moment, an unspoken conversation passed between them, authority meeting authority. Then she turned, her eyes landing on Miller. "I accept," she said evenly. The range crackled with tension. The storm above was nothing compared to the storm below. As preparations began, Miller moved closer. He kept his voice low. "You don't have to prove anything to me." Her eyes narrowed. "I'm not proving it to you." He swallowed, "Then who?" Her hand brushed the pink pendant at her neck. She didn't answer. The challenge course was brutal. 5 targets, increasing distances. Movement under time. The final target, 6,500 meters. 50 meters beyond the previous impossible shot. Miller went first. He moved with combat efficiency, every transition smooth, tactical, learned in blood. He hit 4 out of 5. His final shot at 6,500 missed by inches. The crowd still applauded. It was world-class shooting. And then it was her turn. From the first movement, everyone knew. She didn't move like a competitor. She moved like water, like rhythm. Every step flowing, every transition seamless. Her breathing never changed. Her shots were timed to a metronome. 1 target, then 2, then 3, perfect. The 4th, 5,000 meters, dead center. The 5th, 6,500, rain driving sideways, the world waiting. Knelt, her hand touched the pink pendant one last time. For a moment she wasn't on the range. She was in a hospital room, Sophie in a bed, her twin, tubes running, monitors screaming. Sophie's voice had been weak, breaking. "Promise me, Em. Promise me you'll finish what we started. They need shooters who can make the impossible shots, the ones that bring our people home." Her own hand gripping Sophie's. "I promise." The monitor flatlining. The memory fatting. Back in the storm, her breathing stilled. Crack! The steel sang at 6,500 meters, dead center. The silence was absolute. Then the spotter's voice broke, almost trembling. Perfect hit, 6,500 meters. The impossible had just been broken again. Miller's chest tightened. For the first time in his career, he felt something he had never felt before, so sharp it almost hurt. General stepped forward, his voice carried over the stunned crowd. Assessment complete, Major full operational clearance confirmed. The title dropped like a bomb. Major. Not lieutenant, not competitor, Major, Sierra 7. She rose, calm as ever, her pink rifle gleaming in the storm. Miller stood frozen, pride shattered, worldview shaken. He had spent the day trying to expose her. Now he realized he'd been standing next to someone from a world he couldn't even comprehend. And for the first time, Staff Sergeant James Miller, combat veteran, decorated marksman, survivor, felt small. But inside that smallness, something new flickered. Respect. How quickly can a competition turn into a war? The applause from perfect 6,500-meter shot hadn't even faded before the low thrum of helicopter rotors began to cut through the storm. At first, some thought it was part of the show, an arrival for the awards ceremony. But the way the aircraft banked low, the urgency of the soldiers unloading, told a different story. The range, only moments ago a stage for pride and rivalry, shifted into something else entirely. Radios crackled. Unmarked vehicles rolled in from the far access road. Men in plain tactical gear moved with purpose, setting up communications tables, unfurling satellite imagery under waterproof sheeting. Competitors watched in stunned silence as their sport dissolved into a staging ground. Staff Sergeant Miller stepped closer, his combat instincts humming. He recognized the cadence of these movements, not theater, not practice, real, urgent. General didn't waste time. He strode toward, his suit soaked with rain, his presence steady as bedrock. Major, he said, no longer pretending. Assessment complete. We're green for activation. Snapped into focus, her composure shifting from competitor to operator in the span of a heartbeat. Parameters. Spread the satellite map on a collapsible table. His voice cut through the storm. Extraction team stranded here. His finger landed on a ridge line in the middle of nowhere. 3 PJs, 2 Rangers, 2 wounded. Enemy forces closing in from both valleys. Weather prevents air support. Anti-aircraft in the region makes insertion impossible. They're trapped. His eyes narrowed. Primary obstacles. 6 hostiles entrenched at the cave entrance. 8 more on patrol across Alpha and Bravo ridges. Only way out is through them. They'll never survive without precision suppression. Her hand brushed the pendant at her neck. Shot distance. His eyes flicked toward her rifle. Primary Tango, 6,800 meters. A hush swept the tent. Even Miller's chest locked tight, 6,800. Secondary threats, continued, 5,200 and 4,700. We need simultaneous engagement. If one hears the other go down, they scatter. Mission fails. Nodded once. I'll take primary, need a secondary shooter for flanks. His gaze swept the tent, then stopped on Miller. Sergeant Miller. Miller stiffened, caught off guard. Sir. 3 combat tour, proven under pressure. Good enough today to earn second place against a Sierra operator. You're the man for the secondary. Miller froze, his pride warred with disbelief. Sir, with respect, I'm not. You're not Sierra, cut him off. But you adapt, and that's exactly what we need. He glanced at, she recommended you. Miller turned to her. Rain streaked her face, her eyes locked on him. Cold, calculating. I need someone who won't freeze, she said simply. He swallowed. Every instinct screamed at him to resist, to remind them he wasn't trained for this. But another instinct cut through louder. That others may live. The motto, He had heard it before somewhere. Now he understood. "I'm in," Miller said. Gave a sharp nod. "Gear up, wheels up in 20." The tent exploded into motion. Communications teams relayed coordinates. Operators hauled crates of ammunition. A portable weather station was erected on the far side. Miller stood still for a moment, the weight settling in. He wasn't just competing anymore. He was deploying. Approached, carrying her rifle case. Up close, without the wall of competition between them, he saw her differently. Not just the calm, calculating shooter, not just the quiet lieutenant he thought he could dismiss, but a commander carrying something heavier than rank. She stopped in front of him. "Major Sierra 7, program lead." He blinked. "Major." She extended her hand, firm grip. "Staff Sergeant James Miller, 5th Special Forces. Your shooting was excellent today." He exhaled, still trying to catch up. "You're telling me this wasn't a competition." "It was." "An assessment," she finished. "For me, for you, for us both." Her words landed heavy. He studied her for a moment. "That rifle, it's not just a memorial, is it?" Her hand brushed the stock gently. "My sister designed it, Sophie. She was PJ, Operation Kingfisher 3 years ago." Miller stiffened. He knew the name. A botched rescue, classified but whispered about. A failed sniper shot, a team lost. "She was the lead PJ," continued quietly. "The mission failed when their shooter couldn't make the 4,200-meter shot. Sophie died in the extraction attempt." Her voice didn't waver, but her jaw tightened. "I promised her it would never happen again." For the first time, Miller saw her not as the ghost of Sierra 7, but as a sister carrying a burden. He nodded once, respect deep and real. Chaos erupted at the range entrance. A transport truck rolled in, soldiers unloading crates of classified gear. His voice cut through. "Load the birds now." Turned back to Miller, her professional mask back in place. "Your role: eliminate secondary threats at 5,200 and 4,700, simultaneous with my primary. Timing has to be perfect. We get one chance." Miller's throat tightened. Even in Afghanistan, his longest confirmed kill had been under 3,000. This was nearly double. "Understood," he forced out. "You'll adapt," she said simply. He almost laughed. Her faith in him was terrifying. Minutes later, the unmarked helicopter lifted from the tarmac, storm winds hammering its frame. Inside, under red lights, opened her case. The pink rifle gleamed against black tactical gear. She ran her fingers across the engraving near the stock. Sophie's name. She whispered so softly he almost didn't hear. "We're bringing them home." Miller turned away, giving her the silence she needed. He adjusted the unfamiliar TAC-338 assigned to him. Not his rifle, not his scope, but it would have to do. For the first time in years, James Miller felt nervous, not because of the distance, not because of the mission, but because for the first time he wasn't sure he was good enough. And sitting across from him, calm as stone in the storm, was the woman who just made the impossible possible. Sierra 7. And this time, she wasn't shooting for records. She was shooting for lives. What does it feel like to lie still, knowing the lives of others hang on your breath? Dawn broke cold over the ridge. The storm had passed in the night, but the air was heavy, damp, the kind of silence that carried every sound. 2 figures lay prone beneath camouflage netting, rifles settled against their shoulders. 6,800 meters away, across valleys and jagged ridges, the trapped Americans clung to life. Scope their desperation. 2 Rangers. 2 were wounded badly. Ammunition nearly gone. Enemy patrols tightening the noose. Miller lay beside her, his cheek pressed against the TAC-338. He'd spent the night drilling its quirks, memorizing the trigger break, the way the bolt felt in his hand. But still, it wasn't his rifle, and this wasn't a competition. It was life or death. "Conditions?" asked softly, eyes never leaving her scope. Miller read from the small tactical weather station. Wind variable northeast, 8 to 12 knots. Barometric 30.12 and falling. Humidity 62. She adjusted her dope without hesitation, as if her mind ran faster than the instruments. Her notebook was already 3 pages thick with calculations. Primary targets, cave entrance, she murmured. 6 entrenched. Secondary tangos on Alpha Ridge and Bravo Ridge. Through his scope, Miller caught glimpses of movement. Enemy patrols. Their rifles cradled loosely, confident their prey was trapped. Distance readouts confirmed what had warned. Primary, 6,823 meters. Secondary, 5,200 and 4,700. Distances that mocked human limitation. "Synchronize on my mark," said. Her voice was calm, but Miller heard something underneath, something heavy. He swallowed. "Major, even for Sierra 7, 6 shots at that distance in 4 seconds. 4 seconds is all I'll have before they scatter," she cut him off. "That's how long the world gives me, 4 seconds." He turned his head slightly, studying her profile in the pale light. Her jaw was set, her eyes unblinking, calm as always. But he saw it then, the faintest tremor in her fingers as they brushed the pendant at her neck. "Sophie," he said quietly. Her breath hitched almost imperceptibly. "She'd have made the shot," whispered. Miller didn't answer. He let the silence stretch heavy and human. For the first time since he'd met her, he felt the weight she carried. Not just duty, not just pride, but grief sharp and enduring, a promise forged in loss. The radio crackled. "Sierra Actual to Overwatch. Extraction team 5 minutes out. Green light for suppression." Clicked her mic. "Copy, Overwatch initiating." Her eyes narrowed. "On my mark 2-1. Miller's world shrank to his scope. The patrol leader on Alpha Ridge came into focus, his silhouette crisp in the morning haze. On Bravo Ridge, another tango leaned lazily against a rock. Miller slowed his breathing. 1 heartbeat, half exhale, hold. "Execute," whispered. Miller squeezed, his rifle cracked. Almost simultaneously hers did, then again, and again. 6 shots in rapid succession, impossibly fast. Through his scope, Miller watched his target crumple, then flicked to Bravo down as well. He barely heard his own shots over the staccato bark of his pink rifle. 1, 2, 3. Each target at the cave fell as if pulled by invisible strings. 6 bodies collapsing before they even registered danger. By the time his own second tango hit the ground, her 6th was already gone. Silence. Then the radio. "Overwatch, confirm area secure." Miller blinked, still staring through his scope at the 6 lifeless forms at the cave mouth. Perfect headshots, at nearly 7,000 meters, in under 4 seconds. His throat tightened, he keyed his mic. "Sierra Actual, all targets down. Area secure for extraction. Repeat, all threats neutralized." The response came sharp, relieved. "Copy, Overwatch. Inbound now. Outstanding work." Miller lowered his rifle slowly, his hands trembling. He turned his head toward. She was already breaking her rifle down. Calm, efficient, like she'd just finished a routine drill. But her hand lingered on the stock. Her eyes closed for half a second. He realized then that she wasn't calm at all. She was holding it in. The sound of rotors grew in the distance. Through his scope, Miller watched the extraction helicopter descend. Dust and debris kicked up in spirals. The stranded men waved weakly. The wounded were lifted first, then the rest. Last up was a tall Air Force. Before boarding, he turned. Though Miller knew it was impossible at this distance, the man raised his hand in salute toward them. His breath caught. Miller turned his head. "Your brother." Her jaw clenched, but she nodded. For the first time since he met her, he saw emotion break through. Relief, pain, pride, all tangled. The helicopter lifted, the survivors safe, mission complete. Exhaled slowly. For the first time her composure cracked. just slightly. She touched the pendant at her neck, whispering something too quiet for him to hear. Miller didn't ask, he just watched her. Because in that moment he knew. This wasn't about records, or pride, or competitions. It was about promises. What happens after the impossible is done. The helicopter vanished into the horizon, carrying the wounded and the weary back toward safety. The sound of its rotors faded, swallowed by the endless mountains. For a long time, only silence remained. Didn't move. She lay prone on the ridge, her pink rifle still disassembled beside her. Her breathing was steady, but her eyes remained locked on the distant cave entrance. 6 black shapes sprawled in the dirt, unmoving. Miller sat up slowly, stretching aching muscles. His hands still trembled faintly. He had seen firefights, watched men die, survived ambushes in cities and mountains alike. But he had never witnessed anything like what he had just seen. Not just her impossible shots. Her silence afterward. "Major," he said quietly, unsure if he was addressing a soldier or a myth. She didn't look at him. "Mission's complete," he offered. "You did it." Her voice was almost a whisper. "Not for me." The words puzzled him, until her hand brushed the pendant at her neck, until he saw the faint engraving on the rifle's stock, Sophie. It hit him then. The burden she had carried through the competition, through the storm, through every impossible shot. She wasn't shooting to win. She wasn't shooting for glory. She was shooting for someone who couldn't. Miller swallowed. For the first time in years, he felt something like humility pressing against his chest. "You kept your promise," he said softly. Her eyes closed just briefly, a single breath escaping like a release. "I tried." They packed their gear in silence. Every snap of a latch, every fold of netting seemed louder than it should have been. When the transport helicopter finally swung back to retrieve them, the two of them moved side by side without words. The flight back was quiet, leaned against the bulkhead, eyes shut, hands still on the pendant. Miller sat opposite her, rifle across his lap, watching her, trying to understand her. For years he had thought himself hardened, experienced. He had worn arrogance like armor, but sitting across from her now, he realized how shallow that armor had been. Because what he saw wasn't arrogance. It was weight. And she carried it silently, with no need for anyone's validation. The helicopter touched down at just as dusk settled. The range was empty now, the crowds long gone, the laughter and rivalry forgotten. Only a skeleton crew of officers and security remained, clustered around General. Stood as they disembarked. His sharp eyes swept over them both, measuring, weighing. "Outstanding work," he said simply. Nodded once. "Mission complete, all targets neutralized, extraction successful." "Confirmed." His gaze shifted to Miller. "And you, Sergeant, adapted under fire, performed under conditions few could endure." Miller straightened. "Sir." Folded his arms. "You understand now, don't you?" Miller hesitated. His pride wanted to resist, to cling to the old narrative of combat tour and hard-won experience. But his honesty, the part of him that had always cut through excuses on the battlefield, forced the truth. "Yes, sir, I understand." Nodded. "Sierra 7 doesn't recruit from applications. We recruit from necessity. You weren't here for a competition. You were here for an evaluation." The words landed heavy. Miller blinked. "Me." Opened her eyes, her expression unreadable. "That's why you were second," she said softly. Miller frowned. "What do you mean?" "Second place wasn't a failure," she said. "It was confirmation, proof you could adapt, proof you could push beyond what you thought was possible." His chest tightened. He remembered every taunt he had thrown her way, every dismissal, and she had known. She had let him play the fool because his arrogance was part of the test. His voice came out rough. "So I've been a what? A lab rat?" Shook her head. "A soldier, being measured for a different kind of battlefield." stepped closer, his voice calm but carrying the weight of command. Staff Sergeant Miller, Sierra 7 is expanding its operational parameters. We need operators who have combat instincts and the humility to adapt. Today, you demonstrated both. Consider this your preliminary invitation. Miller stared. You're serious? Deadly said. Silence stretched between them. Finally, Miller exhaled. And if I say no? His eyes flicked briefly too. Then you walk away having seen something few ever will, but I don't think you will. Miller looked back at. For once, her face wasn't the mask of perfect composure. There was something else there, something almost vulnerable. You're not alone in this, she said quietly. Even Sierra operators need someone beside them, someone who won't look at the impossible and walk away. The words hit harder than any order could. Miller rubbed a hand across his jaw. He thought of Helmand, of nights staring through his scope praying he wouldn't miss. He thought of the arrogance he'd wrapped himself in, the shield of being good enough. And then he thought of her silence, her grief, her pink rifle gleaming in the storm. He nodded slowly. I'll hear you out. His face betrayed the faintest flicker of approval. Good, that's all we ask. The conversation ended there, as if too much more would break the fragile layer of secrecy surrounding them. The debrief stretched late into the night. Miller sat through it, absorbing fragments of language, references half-redacted even as they were spoken, parallax initiative, extreme precision engagement, rescue parameters that bent human limitations. Most of it he didn't understand, not yet. But did. Her calm presence anchored the room, her quiet authority stronger than the storm outside. When the debrief ended, dismissed them. Rest while you can. Sierra 7 will be in touch. Miller left the tent into the cool night air, his head spinning. Walked beside him, her silence comfortable now. Finally he spoke, Major. She glanced at him. I owe you an apology for all of it, the bets, the dismissal, the accusations. Her expression didn't harden, didn't soften either. For what specifically? He winced. All of it. She nodded once. Yes, you were out of line. His throat tightened, but then her voice softened just slightly. But your shooting was excellent, and your instincts were right, questioning the unknown, pushing for answers. That's what kept you alive, it's what might make you one of us. He stared at her, her calm, her balance of steel and humanity. For the first time, he realized something. It wasn't her skill that made her untouchable. It was her silence. What do you do when the world only sees the surface, but you carry something deeper? Morning broke over the next day, clear skies after the storm. The range looked ordinary again, targets rehung, brass swept away, the echoes of laughter and rivalry gone. To anyone passing by, it was just another military competition site being reset for next year. But for James Miller, nothing was ordinary anymore. They stood side by side near the far edge of the tarmac, waiting for transport. The base was quiet. The crowd had gone home, the other competitors scattered back to their lives. To them, the story would be simple. An Air Force lieutenant with a flashy rifle had shocked the field, winning a trophy nobody expected her to touch. That was the cover. The truth, what had happened after the storm, the mission, the impossible shot at 6,800 meters, would vanish into files stamped classified. Miller exhaled slowly. So to the world you're just Lieutenant, the girl with the pink rifle. His lips twitched faintly. That's the story they'll be told. That's the story they'll believe. And Sierra 7, he asked. Her eyes softened, but her voice was steady. Sierra 7 doesn't exist, not officially, not in any briefing packet, not on any roster. You'll learn that fast. He smirked faintly, shaking his head. You know, I thought I'd seen it all, thought combat made me an expert, but after yesterday, I feel like a rookie again. Turned to face him, her expression unreadable but her eyes sharp. That's why they picked you, Not because you know everything, because you're willing to admit you don't. The words stung, but they were true. He studied her quietly. And you, what do you get out of all this? You've already broken records, saved lives, why keep going? Her hand moved to the pendant at her neck, thumb brushing the worn pink enamel. Because promises don't end when the mission does. Silence stretched. Miller finally asked the question he'd held back. Your sister, Sophie, she was more than just the reason for the rifle, was she? His breath caught, but she nodded. Her voice, when it came, was low, almost fragile. She was my twin, my other half. We did everything together, school, academy, training. We swore an oath side by side. And when she didn't come back, I swore another one, to carry both our burdens, to finish what she started. Miller's throat tightened. Her eyes glistened, but her voice steadied. The pink was her idea. Said if you're going to break barriers, you might as well do it in color. She designed every modification on this rifle. I just pulled the trigger she never got to. For once, Miller didn't try to answer, didn't try to fill the silence with easy words. He just stood there, letting the truth settle between them. The sound of boots on pavement broke the moment. General approached, his steps measured, his expression as controlled as ever. Major, he said, outstanding work. Your operational clearance is confirmed. You'll receive follow-on tasking within 72 hours. Nodded once. Understood, sir. His gaze shifted to Miller. Sergeant, your file has been forwarded to selection. You'll receive formal invitation soon. Sierra 7 needs shooters who can think under pressure. Yesterday proved you might be one of them. Miller blinked. And if I say no? Stare was hard, unflinching. Then you go back to your unit, Sergeant. Decorated, respected, unchanged. But knowing there's a world beyond what you thought was possible. A world where men and women like Major do what can't be done. And you'll have to live with walking away. Miller's jaw tightened. He thought of yesterday's storm, the impossible shot, the rescue. He thought of Sophie, a name he'd never know except through silence. Finally, he gave a sharp nod. Then I'll be there. His eyes betrayed the faintest glimmer of approval. Good, dismissed. The general turned and walked away, leaving the two of them standing in the quiet once more. Miller looked at. You knew all along, didn't you, that they were evaluating me too? Her lips curved just slightly. Sometimes the best tests are the ones you don't know you're taking. He shook his head, half smiling despite himself. You drive me insane, you know that. Good, she said simply. A transport truck pulled up, its engine rumbling, their ride back. As they climbed aboard, Miller glanced at her rifle case resting against her leg. The pink paint chipped in places, the engraving faint but clear. Sophie's name etched forever. Your sister, he said softly, she'd be proud. For the first time, smiled fully. A small, quiet smile, but real. Her hand brushed the pendant at her neck. She always said if you're going to do the impossible, do it with style. The truck rolled forward, carrying them away from the range that had become a battlefield, an assessment, and a revelation. Miller leaned back, watching the road disappear. His mind was a storm, pride broken, respect earned, horizons widened. He had come to a competition certain he would dominate. He left knowing he had only glimpsed the edge of a world deeper than he imagined. And beside him sat the quiet soldier who had carried grief into silence, who had turned mockery into myth, who had kept a promise to a fallen sister by shattering records no man could touch. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts. And sometimes the most powerful weapon on the battlefield isn't the rifle in your hands. It's the promise in your heart.